If you're familiar with the original story, use the timestamp to access the updates. My wife, 37, a woman, started a new job 4.5 months ago and made a few new friends. But I, a 36-year-old man, didn't particularly like them. They were all hardcore feminists professionally. There is no set method for dealing with grief. Your experience will be unique to you. Today in our space, we learn about a tragedy involving addiction. My wife's adultery devastated both our family and Christmas. Why does she expect me to tolerate her behavior? I initially laughed it off, but over the past 2 months, I've noticed some worrying changes in my wife. We've been married for 11 years, and we have 2 children, 1 male and 1 female. It got worse over time, and she would accuse me of all kinds of stupidity as if I was born wicked because men have historically suppressed women and anything I did for her, which she would normally praise. These women are victims and social justice warriors. I tried to be patient, but these arguments usually ended with me saying something like, "But I haven't done anything wrong to you. I'm only guilty of loving you." This usually caused her to mumble, and the following day she would try it again with slightly different excuses. However, about 5 weeks ago, I had a strong gut feeling that something was seriously wrong, and she returned late at night without warning. The following day, she behaved cold and distant, and I was unable to call her because she was intoxicated. She would reject me and accuse me of being overbearing and overreacting. This happened multiple times. I tried to snoop on her phone but was unable to find anything conclusive, even though I believed she had erased many of her communications. However, I did find a thread with one of her new friends about how she would approach me and plead for an open relationship, and I realized right away that she was cheating. My wife said she would talk to me about it. She tries to start the conversation during breakfast as if it were a random thought, asking me what I think of an open relationship. Fortunately, I was prepared. I was already recording, and I've been reading a lot on Reddit. I knew there was no way to save this. My best-case scenario is to come out of this with some sort of pride and self-esteem intact. It's currently the second Monday in December, and my children are with their grandparents to enjoy Christmas. Where are we supposed to meet up with them today? I didn't scream or yell to protect myself and the kids, but instead I immediately went into jaw-clenching interrogation mode. She was arrogant until she saw my expression, but it quickly faded when she saw how naive she looked, as if she didn't understand. If you want to have this talk with me, don't treat me like an idiot and at least be honest. If you can't be honest, what do you mean? If you lie to me, we won't be able to discuss our relationship as you choose. I can tell you are hiding something and it's obvious. So, who is the guy you're screwing? Oh my God. There are more than one. Don't just lie. You have totally ruined my faith in you. I know you're lying, and either you're honest and we work things out or I'm divorcing you. Our marriage is ending right now, no arguments, no talks, nothing but divorce. Do you understand? Do you realize that if you lie, I will divorce? Do you realize I already know a lot? She continues to tell me about 2 one-night stands while out with her friends. I ask them about their marital status, whether she wore protection, and so forth. She tells me that she plans to have sex with a coworker and that she will pursue this because it is beneficial for her. I also ask about the colleague and get his and his wife's names. He is married, but she prefers that we be. She continues by saying that she will introduce me to a number of her friends in an open relationship, one of whom seemed very interested. What the F? I've seen this friend, and I wouldn't touch her with a barge pole. I tell her I'm not interested. I ask for her phone, and she shows me how to open it while she goes to the restroom. I shut myself in my office, and she freaks out. I ran phone recovery software for deleted data while she was hammering on the door, which produced a ton of painful evidence. After 30 minutes, I downloaded a spying app from an internet site. When I got out, I gave her the phone and told her to leave. She argued a lot, but I didn't say anything in response. She was screaming at me that I was controlling her and holding her back in the same way that men have always held women back, that I didn't love her, that she had every right to do this, that she expected me to just accept it, that it wasn't a big deal, and so on. I didn't argue back. I hardly said anything. Instead, I packed her things while she yelled at me, and I ended up at the front door, standing there until she lost steam. Eventually, she went back to her parents' house against her will, and as she was going down the stairs, I told her that she was now single and could do anything she wanted. I wasn't controlling her, and my lawyer would get in touch with her in January. When she was ready to react, I just slammed the door and locked it. Later, I watched as she discussed it with her friends, who were telling her how strong she was and how she was entitled to more than me. When they warned her that she could accuse me of domestic abuse if necessary, one of them disclosed how she had cheated on her ex-husband and stolen everything from him by accusing him of abuse. I've ordered cameras for my home now that I know I need to document everything. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I've never threatened her in any way. Then she began messaging her affair partner about meeting up, and they settled on a location. I was so shocked that I looked up the affair partner's wife online. It didn't take long for me to persuade her to accept me as a friend on Facebook. After I told her everything, including the current circumstances at the hotel, she thanked me and hung up. A few hours later, I got a video from her in which she confronted the motel and shouted that this wasn't the first time her spouse had cheated on her. "You effing a holy, you have done this to me and the kids again. I told you it was over if you do this again." She went into the room and recorded my wife getting dressed on the side of the bed. When I first noticed that I had puked, the fair partner's wife hit her and yelled at her. I messaged my wife to let her know that I had watched the hotel footage and that I would never want her around me again. It seems like she views our interaction as a petty argument in which she thinks she is the winner. She is utterly insane, and I don't understand a word of it. It's as though she is detached from reality and is unaware that we are divorcing. Before disconnecting from the WhatsApp group, I told them that we were divorcing because of her infidelity. I appreciate them making me feel accepted and like a member of the family. I've received a few calls and messages from her, but I haven't read or responded to them yet because I don't have the energy. I called my parents and told them everything, and my father texted my wife to let her know that she wouldn't be welcome for Christmas. I've met my parents and spoken with my boss, who has given me until January to sort things out. I've been watching my wife's. I don't think my wife has realized that she has lost her family, that her marriage is over, and that her new friends and affair partner don't care about her. She has written me numerous messages and visited my parents' house to ask to be allowed to spend Christmas with us. My father threatened to call the police if she didn't leave, so now I'm searching for divorce lawyers online and crying uncontrollably. I suppose I was shocked, but the pain has hit me hard since I got to my parents' house. Reading their chats and interacting with her at my parents' house is so confusing to me that I've only replied to her twice. It doesn't matter what you say when you first send a message. I don't know who you are, and you are not my wife. My lady would never break my heart and soul while grinning, and we will get divorced. I don't care what you say or want. You have no power or right to demand anything from me again, and we are done the second time. Subject our children to the pain and suffering of growing up in a broken home. You, whoever you are, seem to be proud of what you have achieved. My wife was very kind and considerate. Think of this as your best friend. You are a self-obsessed, self-absorbed abomination. The message ends after the last one. The pain is unbearable at times, and I wish I could get back in touch with her like I used to, but I can't do that to myself. This is the worst Christmas I could imagine, and I couldn't help but explain to the children. I'm a complete mess, and I will try to get back on my feet for the sake of my kids, but I will never go back to her. I wish I had waited until after Christmas to get them straight into counseling. I'm not sure what happened, but I just said it when they asked when their mother was coming home. They are naturally upset that mommy no longer wants to be a family. She wants to be with other guys and we will divorce. Fortunately, my parents are here to help. They showered them with love and affection. I'm at a loss. Her actions were so callous and disrespectful that they cannot be forgiven. I'm not sure why she thinks she can demand anything from me at this point. Is she mentally ill or something? I just needed to get it out. Edit. I found out that I am okay with the surveillance. I spoke with a lawyer who informed me that my wife is using my phone and subscription, but I own both, so I'm okay. It is illegal to monitor my own equipment, so wow, I'm sorry. There is no reason for your wife to cheat on you and upset the family dynamic if she had any problems with you. She should have told you about them immediately, just like you do with your kids. It sounds like your wife is having an identity crisis, and she is easily duped by those around her, which makes me think she is lost and yearning for answers. Her new acquaintances also seemed to be taking advantage of her precarious position. I apologize for not getting back to anyone or giving an update, but a lot has happened since my last post. I wish I could take credit for it, but I've been a miserable, sobbing mess ever since. I was engrossed in my wife's conversations with her friends, which contained a lot of strange and cruel things that got me in the head. You told them anything inappropriate in this situation, which helps teach kids what is good and wrong. Let's read on. When my soon-to-be ex-wife harshly described how her marriage and, in particular, her kids were a burden in her life, keeping her from reaching her full potential, she described how I, as her husband, were an oppressive piece of junk that kept her from enjoying life and how her family was to blame for both her excessive casual sex and her lack of success in her career. I simply couldn't stand it and spent the next 30 hours or so reading and rereading every email, and she didn't go into detail in our conversations about how we were oppressors or burdens. Instead, she made generalizations without providing examples or justification. In actuality, I've never stopped her from doing anything. I pay for almost everything, and the meager income she receives from her part-time job wouldn't be enough to sustain anyone. In fact, I've supported her hobbies, goals, and dreams, even when she was enrolled in pointless classes that she would consistently skip halfway through each day. I told her that I loved her, and when I woke up, my 3 best friends were in the kitchen with my father preparing dinner. I've known these guys since I was a child, so let's call them Mike, Bob, and Frank. My father had invited them and brought them up to speed, so I quickly broke down again and was completely out of it by Friday. I appreciate everything she did for her family. I would romance her, take her out, and be there for her whenever she needed me. If this is a press, I'd welcome more of it, though. Despite being an amputee specialist, he was quite helpful in understanding what was going on with me emotionally. He told me that most wives regrettably bail when their husbands are injured, and his anecdotes show that Mike is doing well. He is an ex-military man who lost his left arm just below the elbow. We were all there for him while he was recovering, but his wife abandoned him. Fortunately, they had no children. Mike has 2 children and a lovely girlfriend. And examples were really helpful. He asked me to consider my only identity or spiritual self as being greatly influenced by my marriage and role as a husband. That part of me is no longer alive, and just as an amputee feels phantom pain from losing a limb, I will experience phantom agony from the death of a part of myself. We spoke for hours, and I've gradually improved because Bob works as an executive in a security firm. I'm not sure what he does for a living, but he is extremely wealthy. Bob called a law firm on retainer for the corporation, and Sunday morning I was talking to a lawyer that I could never have imagined I could ever afford to see. Bob has always been a big nerd and was bullied a lot. He assured me that I didn't need to worry about the bill because he would pay it. He was relieved that he could finally pay me back for the beatings I had received for interfering with his bullies. Frank is a teacher at a private school with 4 children and is married with 7 children. Yes, 7, and his kids adore him. My self-pity party turned into pure wrath when I realized that was it for me. Gloves off, complete custody, and I'll give her nothing if I can get away with it. Yesterday was a really crazy day. It started with an STD screening in the morning, where they tested me for Kaya and scheduled another screening in months. The lawyer discovered the ex-husband of one of my wife's feminist friends, who boasted about how she messed him up, according to the court. Filings was a straightforward process that I wouldn't have thought about. I spoke with him on WhatsApp and he thanked me profusely, but he also told me about all the heartache my soon-to-be ex-wife had caused him. After our conversation, I was ready for battle, and it was heartbreaking to hear that he had been homeless and hadn't seen his kids in 4 years because of the ex-wife's lies. I know that, as a man, I am at a disadvantage in the legal system, and I'll make sure I have. I spoke with my Sunni ex-wife on Zoom, keeping in mind that she hadn't gotten in touch with me since she came to the door to argue with. I have a lot of evidence that my lawyer suggested a restraining order as a preemptive attack in response to her nasty and aggressive remarks about men in general, especially for the sake of our son growing up in a home with an openly anti-male parental figure. I told the lawyer to proceed, expecting to be served with the restraining order today. My father doesn't seem to care about any of us because she hasn't gotten in touch with the kids or anyone else. The call was odd. She was completely made up and had a large cleavage, making it obvious that she was trying to look her best. Throughout the conversation, She tried to provoke me into an argument to make me angry, but I was able to keep my cool. My lawyer had given me advice on what to ask for in order to try to have an amicable divorce before filing for a contested divorce, which seems to be quite helpful. I was recording. She didn't let me down when I told her that I was still going to be an ex-wife. She started off by making the dumb remark that there are two different kinds of penises. One that is usually the same size whether erect or not, and the other that shrinks and increases depending on whether it is. She then thought about how she was eager for the current restrictions to end so she could go out and look into this more in person. I just said that I wasn't. She was only interested in talking about our divorce and became overtly hostile when I didn't fall for her ruse. She told me she was going to the bathroom and then muted herself, and I watched as she talked about what she could do with me with her friends. She cursed me out several times during the call for nothing more than being a guy, and I still had the strange feeling that she saw this as a game in which she was in control and that I had no choice but to put up with it. She just looked at me and said, "Yeah, right, I don't believe you. Honestly don't know what's going on with her, and I don't care anymore." I sent the recording to the lawyer, who was shocked to hear that everyone thinks my wife is insane at this point, and maybe she is. We made little progress on our divorce, so I decided that all right, fine, I'll oppose the divorce. By the way, you gave me chlamydia, and unlike you, I haven't slept with anyone else, so you should go to the clinic right away. After our call, there was a frenzied discussion among the harpies, but I was finally able to put it aside because I no longer care what they are talking about. The lawyer is certain that we will win this case unless there is something I haven't told him about, so here we go. It still hurts, but I can disregard it as phantom agony at this point. Now that I own her phone and membership, I can also use the conversation logs in court. I found out today that she was aware of the Kaya and Reed treatment, but she didn't tell me because she was laughing and joking about it with her friends. It's very easy to become obsessive when you're checking in on your wife and gathering proof we tend to hold on to. Jugular, no prisoners. I need to protect both myself and my children. I'm fine, my children will be fine, and I'll make sure they get as much therapy as they want. It can be challenging to reach out and ask for help. So let's start with update 2 first. Those things are because we're trying to figure out why the infidelity happened and where everything went wrong. It's also hard to see what people are saying about you behind your back. She is a hurt and bitter person who wants to hurt people around her. All I know is that she should have told you how she felt when things first started rather than waiting for something really terrible to change your life. I appreciate all of your feedback, with the exception of the hacker ads that were disguised as comments or PMS, which I have disabled. I receive a lot of comments that suggest I am strong, winning in some way, or winning. When I go back and read my posts again, I can see that my anger at the situation comes through and I can appear rebellious and confident in myself, which I am not. I wish it had never happened. I hope my family was still together and that I could have a long, comfortable, and secure life with my wife while our children grew and started their own lives. There is no winner here. My wife has lost her mind, and the entire train is burning in the ditch. I don't know what's wrong with her. She won't see a doctor about possible mental health problems, and she acts as though nothing is wrong. She acts as though I'm crazy for not just giving in to her demands. And she hasn't spoken to the kids much since D-Day. I'm divorcing her, taking action, and separating our lives because her behavior has left me with no other option. How would you respond to your child's question, "Why doesn't mommy want to see me anymore? Doesn't she adore me?" If anyone knows the answer, please let me know because I certainly don't every day I wake up. Looking back, I really wish this wasn't necessary. I'll never trust her again, and I cry myself to sleep every night over my personal loss and the fact that my children won't grow up in a broken house. It also breaks my heart that my children no longer have a functional relationship with their mother. And tell myself that my heart has already been broken into so many pieces that it can never break again, only to be proven wrong every single day. My wife is adamant that I will never leave her, and she doesn't even know that I can monitor her communications or that she cares. She also keeps talking negatively about me, our marriage, and our kids to her friends. I don't understand why she hates us so much, as we haven't done any of the things she accuses us of doing. Her friends, as previously mentioned, my lawyer won a temporary restraining order against her. Yesterday morning, there was a hearing, and since there were no new direct threats, the order wasn't extended. My lawyer suggested using the fact that she intentionally infected me as a threat to try to get her to agree to an uncontested divorce. I wish we could separate in a reasonable manner because I detest having to view her as my enemy and always assume the worst. If she wanted to leave me, I could live with that, but why force me? I would appreciate any insight into this matter because it just doesn't make sense to me. If I go to court, I will likely have to pay her a lump sum for the equity in her house, etc., and I won't likely be liable for alimony. Since she doesn't show any interest in the kids, I'm hoping I'll get custody of them if it goes to court. However, my lawyer suggested we try to get her to agree to pay me a lump sum for the equity in her business. I accepted her agreement for a friendly divorce, and we will meet with my student ex-wife and her attorney. Hopefully, this week, the ex-husband who was duped by the dishonest harpy will spend New Year's Eve with me and the children. The injustice of the legal system against fathers is so unbelievable that I no longer have any illusions about getting a fair trial if we go to court. His ex-wife lied to the court, and the court accepted it as fact without any supporting evidence, and he has scarcely seen his kids since he was told to pay excessive amounts of child support and alimony, and it's essentially destroyed him. He has been thinking about ending things permanently, and with the new evidence he received from me, he has found hope again. We speak with my lawyer, and she advises him to hold onto the evidence until the meeting with my wife and her attorney. If he acts now, it will demonstrate to us that we have access to all of their communications, and my lawyer wants to divorce my wife and me as quickly and amicably as possible. At this point, I just hope I can leave. Update 3. Unfortunately, the strange situation continues. Yesterday afternoon, I had a meeting with my lawyer and my soon-to-be ex-wife, and she arrived 30 minutes late. If she chooses to fight, it could drag on for a long time and it's stressing me out. I just need to get out. I'll post an update if I get a meeting, or if we go straight to a disputed process in court. Opie's wife sounds more and more delusional. It's a shame she isn't open to seeking help. She brought one of her new harpy friends instead of a lawyer, claiming she doesn't need or have one. However, after hearing this, my lawyer gave me very strict instructions on how to behave. I was to respond positively if I could and non-confrontationally to anything they said. If my lawyer placed one or both of her hands flat on the table, I was to keep my mouth shut completely so they arrive late. Of course, the harpy censor tries to insult me and win me up in any way she can think of. My soon-to-be ex-wife does the same. My lawyer is attempting to start a conversation about the topic of our divorce, but they are just making jokes and laughing at their own insults to me a lot. It was really embarrassing to watch. It's obvious now that my wife still thinks this is all a ruse, that there is no way I can divorce her. Only she can do so, and if she does, she will receive everything. I just sat there wondering what the F is going on, because I didn't actually. I only replied a few times, and each time it was something like, "Yes, you're probably right," or "I really don't know." Eventually, they ran out of steam, and my lawyer took over. She began presenting the proposed settlement for an amicable divorce, and one of the first things she said was that I was willing to be generous for a quick, peaceful resolution, paying her a sizable lump sum of $60,000 for the equity in the house, investments, etc. My lawyer didn't even finish the sentence before my soon-to-be. My lawyer repeatedly asked if my soon-to-be ex-wife didn't want to go over the rest of the agreement first, but she insisted on signing right away. She began talking about when she could expect to receive the money and that they needed to get to the pub, so my lawyer called someone and whispered something to them. There was a flurry of activity as the ex-wife got all excited and together with her harpy friend, who was nudged by the hideous-looking harpy next to her. Identity documents, and we were asked to sign the copies. After we finished, the elderly woman stamped it, and I discovered later that she was a notary. At this point, I thanked my ex-wife and the harpy and told them we were done. They left, and my wife didn't even bring her copy of the agreement with her. Instead, she left it on the table. My lawyer looked at me and at her flat hands, clearly not wanting me to say anything while they were in the building and when we saw them crossing the parking lot. On the surface, it appears that I will get through this divorce much more easily than I initially believed. However, my soon-to-be ex-wife can still hire legal representation and contest this fact. The lawyer looked at me and said congratulations before going into detail about how this was the strangest session she had ever had for a negotiated divorce. She told me that she would send her my soon-to-be ex-wife's copy after we have a hearing in front of the judge, or if she gets a lawyer who requests it. I have a lot of evidence if I need it, and I hope it's enough if my wife signed to give me full custody with only a one-time payment and no spousal support. My lawyer told me she would try to call in every favor she could think of to get me a hearing with a judge as soon as possible. It will probably be a video call. I also hired a PI after reading some advice on Reddit, and he got pictures of my wife making out with 2 different guys at 2 different bars yesterday, and she went to a hotel with one of them. Nothing, just $60K, and I'm free now. I just need to find the money. I have a plan, and Bob offered to pay me the full amount if necessary. I still don't think this is real, and I'm accusing you of molesting the children in domestic abuse through her hat. The lawyer advised me to keep a very low profile, pay for everything I normally pay for, and don't upset anyone in any way. The advice is to sit still, wait, and respond to nothing, basically nothing. I'm basically divorced, and it will take 4 to 6 months for the paperwork to be official. At this point, there is really nothing anyone can do to change the outcome. The only thing left to do is for my wife and I to stop it. I'm so exhausted that I haven't slept in I don't know how many days. So if I'm a little disorganized, I apologize. I just need to be patient and hope for the best. Nitch is really digging her own grave. I'm getting off track for the weekend until today, which has been crazy. On Friday morning, a group of police officers knocked at my door with a warrant to search the house. I was very confused and worried about the kids, so I asked if I could bring them outside while they searched. Fortunately, my amazing lawyer got me an early hearing just 12 days after I submitted the paperwork, so I'm sure she called in some favors on this one. Acknowledged that they didn't really tell me much, but I did receive a copy of the warrant, and I was so shaken up that I couldn't really make sense of it. I suppose everyone who said that my ex-wife's behavior was likely drug-related is at least partially to blame for this. The cop threatened to completely destroy my house, so I called my lawyer and she spoke with them, but the warrant was valid, so there was nothing that could be done at the time. I didn't give it much thought at the time, but I now have cameras everywhere in case I get. I have video and audio of everything, so I could potentially make a claim later if I want to. To be honest, I'm not sure if I have the energy or will to do that, so I might just put a line over it and move on. I was unaware at the time, but X and her 3 harpy friends were driving my car while intoxicated and crashed into a house at a high speed. They were all arrested, and they all had drugs on their bodies and in their bodies. They were seriously hurt in the collision, and the passenger seat was critically injured. I don't know if she will even make it to the lead harpy, so let's call her Henrietta. She boasted about lying and screwing over her ex-husband in court, so let's call him Henry. Fortunately, they found nothing during the search, so I told them that my ex no longer lives here. She lives with her parents. I don't know what she is doing, and I didn't give Henrietta permission to drive my car, etc. When I returned home, I just broke down. Everything was utterly destroyed. It was the last straw, I suppose. The only thing I could think to do was to call my dad, who took me and the kids home to stay with my mom. He then assembled a group of 26 friends and family members, and as I sobbed on the back porch, eating my mom's delicious comfort food and feeling sorry for myself, they fixed and cleaned my entire house. They cleaned every room, cleaned the dishes, fixed the ceiling, and even fixed any loose doors, handles, etc. I simply couldn't believe they would do such a thing for me, and I don't know how I'll ever be able to pay them back. Thanks to them, I went from feeling suicidal to feeling pretty good over the weekend. The police discovered more drugs at Henrietta's house, and her boyfriend wasn't there. Nor was there a babysitter. The children were taken by CPS, and Henry was granted temporary emergency custody on Saturday after he showed the judge the chat logs, the abandonment, and the mountains of drugs. Henry is ecstatic. He hasn't spent much time with his children in the past 5 years. He had been saving money to fight Henrietta in court when this happened, and he still needs to go to court to make it permanent, but the odds are pretty good right now. Everyone believes Henrietta will have to serve time if her friend doesn't make it serious time, and he will then try to get child support and compensation for all the crap she did. However, he isn't expecting much from this, and to be honest, I believe he doesn't want to waste his time fighting in court. Be with his children and ensure their happiness. It's pretty obvious that Henrietta has been extremely negligent toward them. Bob has been a champ and arranged for Henry to live in a rental apartment through a friend. I've realized that I know very little about Bob's personal or professional life, but I plan to change that. Anyway, I'm getting off topic again. Henrietta was driving when she drove off the road and into a house where they were all quite damaged, and as a result, search warrants for alcohol and drugs were issued. It turns out that she has been lying to them about everything the night she has been out partying and cheating, which is why I decided on Sunday to sell this house and move out as soon as possible. I'm afraid this will probably happen again. On Sunday, I received a call from her parents, who said that their house had been searched and that they had visited their daughter in jail on Saturday and no longer trust anything she tells them. She basically told them that she was staying with me and we were trying to work things out. They didn't know what was going on or what she had done to me and the kids, but they thought it was a one-time drunken mistake. On Monday, my wife called to ask me to post $155,000 bail, but her parents had already told her no. After speaking with my lawyer, she created some documents stating that the bail would be deducted from the settlement until she appeared in court and the bail was released. X didn't really have an option and she signed, but according to her parents, she refused to follow the conditions they had set for her to continue living there, such as quitting drugs, committing to rehab, dropping bad friends, and so on. She reportedly left their home on Tuesday to stay with some of her new friends, but she didn't show up. Mother is the custodian of the remaining amount, and my lawyer didn't want my wife to have any excuse for missing the hearing, so she wanted me to get her out. For the hearing, and after presenting the judge with all the information, including the events of the previous weekend, I was granted full custody. The settlement, as per our agreement, was completed in just 30 minutes, but in practice, nothing can be done to stop it. This leads us to today, when I couldn't sleep, and everyone was congratulating me and treating me as though I had won a significant victory, but it really doesn't feel like I won anything. It's just pain that I still love. My wife was my best friend and soulmate until recently, but I know it's over and there's no way back. Even though I feel like my love for her has been mortally wounded, it still hurts like a mother. There are no winners in this. I lose, my wife loses, and my kids lose. I'm at a loss for words. It feels like I'm being asked to celebrate losing both of my legs. But because I took action, one of my legs could have been cut below the knee while the other was cut above. I'm complaining a little bit here. Sorry, but I got a call from the hospital today informing me that my ex is in the hospital. I am still her emergency contact and she is still covered by my health insurance. There was an altercation, and she broke her jaw and lost some teeth. She will need to stay for observation for a few days, so I bring her parents, and when I get there, it's like they're praising me for saving half a kneecap while losing both of my legs. It turns out that she has been severely beaten by some of her new friends. Ward discovered that Henry had chat logs of Henrietta boasting about what she had done to Henry from my wife's phone, and they assumed that my wife had given the logs to Henry. As a result, they beat her up and kicked her out. It's amazing that she still didn't realize that I have access to monitor her phone. I will continue to do things like pay for insurance for her phone, etc., until I hold the documents in front of me. It's the first time I've seen her express regret since this began. But I believe it's regret that she can no longer continue with her madness. She did say, "I'm sorry I ruined everything." But I don't think it's sincere. She asked if she could move back home, but I told her that her mother wouldn't give her a dime unless she gets clean and stays clean for at least a year. If she doesn't accept, I don't see how she will manage. She barely looked me in the eyes while I was there, which hurts. I felt like I wanted to protect her, but she's an adult, and her behavior is dangerous and unpredictable, and I need to protect my kids. In addition, she didn't inquire about the hearing or the condition of her seriously injured friend. She just sat there looking irritated. I still don't understand this. She's lost everything, destroyed her family, and caused a lot of pain for many people, and for what a buzz and some random sex I'm going totally no contact until she has been clean for a long time because I just can't handle all the crazy. I'm so sorry, but you might never understand her behavior or what's going on in her head, and that's okay. Sometimes we don't get closure. Your ex is really troubled, and she is the only one who can help herself. Update 5. A lot of people PM me for an update, but I didn't have the energy yesterday. I'm feeling very tired and depressed, and when I do sleep, I have terrible nightmares. I have virtually no contact with my ex. I did speak with one of her harpy friends who was in critical condition, She woke up but was in terrible shape. I spoke to her nurse, and she expressed her sadness that no one had bothered to check on her while she was there. They had contacted her family and simply refused to see her. The kids are doing better and my dad is doing great. I don't know what I'll do without him. This weekend we went skiing at his cabin with him and the kids, and it was fantastic for me and the children, so I asked the nurse if I could speak with her. She said that I shouldn't, but I felt compelled to ask her about what had happened since my wife began working with him. She began by asking if I wanted a BJ for $20, so it wasn't awkward at all. I offered her $50 in exchange for the information I needed. The Harpy friends are all serious drug users and addicts. Henrietta dragged my wife into their group against the wishes of the other two, persuaded her to try drugs and party with them, and they sold sexual favors. It's not easy to hear that the person you love the most turned herself into a prostitute in order to meet her. Henrietta is the leader of this movement, and while they all preach strong feminist ideas about our own bodies, as she puts it, it's all bullshit to protect our own imagined egos. In reality, we prostitute ourselves for money to buy drugs. My wife fell for the BS first, and it didn't take long for her to become addicted, just like the others. She told me without even blinking how sad she was that she survived, that she has no hope for the future, and that she looks like a walking death without makeup. It was painful to listen to her, and I cried a lot for my wife's sake. I'm not excusing her because she chose to play with drugs, and it makes sense that all she wanted was money. Now, from what she tells me, it's mostly meth. I will return to this later. Henrietta has been charged with death threats, resisting arrest, drug possession, prostitution, drug trafficking, child abuse and neglect, DUI, property damage, and auto theft. Before I continue, I would like to thank those of you who reached out with experience dealing with addicts. She lost with this crap and will now pay the price. She also told me about all the guys who beat up my ex-wife. Warned me that my ex might attempt suicide now that the walls are closing, and you were right. She did try to do it on purpose. I had discussed this with her father beforehand, and we decided to try to keep a close eye on her. Fortunately, she is still unaware that I have real-time information from her cell phone. On Saturday, while we were at the cabin, I received a message from her that reads like a suicide note. In it, she tells me about her addiction, prostitution, how she let everyone down, and that she will do the only thing she can do, etc. I called her father right away, and since I have the mobile monitor, I also know where she is. Her father rushes out and finds her unconscious on a park bench. She is taken to the hospital right away, and they put her on methadone. Because of this, her father has successfully become her appointed guardian, and she is no longer able to object to treatment. Her father had her forcibly committed to a rehab facility, and she will. I'm not sure when she went through a sedated detox, but it was probably this week that her father was appointed. Not because she owed anything, but because she abandoned her kids. Apparently, leaving your kids behind shows that you're not a sane person, but it's okay anyway. Fortunately, I haven't had a chance to cancel her life insurance yet, so she will receive treatment. I've offered my ex-father-in-law to help with the finances as long as my ex isn't aware that I am. I've been terrified that the men who beat up my wife were going to. I don't know if I mentioned it, but Henry is a furious meat mountain of a man who grew up on a farm carrying things since he was a kid. So he looks like he could tear the average man in half. He bends down to walk through doorways, has a crew cut, and some facial scars. Let's just say he is very intimidating if you don't remember that, and remember that Henry presented chat logs in court that they think my wife gave to him. He is incredibly patient, kind, and gentle. I have no doubt that he will use force if necessary, but for him, it's a last resort. He went to the man's apartment, which is a real shithole, and grabbed the two men by the neck and informed them that Henrietta had given him the chat logs. Since they had hurt someone, he knew they had two options. Go with him to the police and confess everything related to the assault, or face him directly. If they chose the latter option, they should expect some extremely painful, permanent injuries. All in all, I'm very depressed and this is weighing heavily on my soul. What keeps me going are my friends and family, and I know I need to stay strong for the kids. My heart breaks for my ex, but despite everything, I don't regret marrying her. I still love her, but I know we can never be back. Too, as he told me, He told them that he was very hopeful that they would choose option 2 apparently couldn't get to the police station fast enough. Needless to say, I no longer worry about them. It's gonna hurt for a long time, and I hope I'm strong enough to get through it. Oddly enough, news of my wife's addiction has helped my kids deal with it. It's much easier to talk about how mommy is sick and it's gonna take a long time for her to get well, but she still loves them, etc. at the moment. Together, she isn't the person she used to be, and there is just too much pain between us. Despite all the pain recently, we had a very good life before that. I think I'm trying to make as many positive new memories as I can, and Henry is doing the same. My kids seem to be doing much better now, so I think it would be okay to thank everyone for their support. This will be my last post here. I believe the last update was that X died of an OD while in rehab. We don't know how she even got the drugs. She must have taken them while in there somehow, but no one really knows how. One doctor believes she swallowed a bag. For many people, grief is the process of grieving the loss of a loved one and moving through the painful yearning to have them back by your side. But what if that emptiness has been there for a while? How do you grieve for a conflicted relationship? The first thing you can do and should do when losing a loved one to addiction is to say, I will not be posting anymore or responding to comments. Thank you to everyone who offered helpful suggestions and comments. I'm so sorry for your family's loss. As difficult as it is to accept, addiction is a serious and frequently fatal illness, but like any other illness, no one person is to blame. Conflicted relationships can often make grieving more difficult, and you may become fixated on the unpleasant memories of the time and distance spent apart. You may then invite these feelings in and open up to others about them. The more you hold in, the more harm you can cause. Sending love and light your way.